Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast. This is episode 87, Hungry for Hollywood, where we'll be taking you back to the Disney MGM studios around the opening time and talking about the food and restaurant options that were there. Sitting in with me, as always, for this recording, Mr. JT Kuja. How are you tonight, JT?
I'm great. Ready to be back. We're back into an episode. First one since Retro Magic.
Other than the live stream.
First real episode.
It feels weird to be sitting here looking at you guys in three boxes rather than being in person. So
yeah,
so good to be back in the swing of things. And coming into us from Western Gulf Coast, Florida, Mr. Hal Bowers. How are you doing tonight, Hal?
Aloha, Todd. I'm doing fine. I can be in Central Florida if you want me to be.
All right, why don't we stop?
I'll pretend.
Go there and then call us when you get there. Okay?
Let me just hop. I'll just take the I-4 corridor through my very favorite Champions Gate exit, and I'll just hang out.
Diverging
Diamond.
Yeah. It's probably it's okay. It's 9:30. It's probably fine by now.
Yeah, sure. The traffic has died down.
He was just making 8 trips a day there, if you recall.
He was lugging monitors and doing other things.
I was doing quite a bit of back and forth, and did it. And I just went recently and picked up a film for us to convert.
Yeah,
which should be very interesting. But we can talk about that after we get the film converted. And a little teaser. Santa gave me a movie for Christmas.
That's right.
Already.
That's already.
Yep.
And as always, coming in from the city of brotherly love, Mr. Brian P. Miles. How are you doing this evening, Brian?
Greetings, salutations, and seasons greetings.
There it is. I knew we were getting at that.
Special time of year.
Yeah. I've got the lights up behind me. I see you've got kind of the seasonal color on as well. You've got a nice maroon.
The whole room here is there's 1,000 Santas staring at me right now.
Next time we record one, could you have a separate camera so we can see your? Because we can only see
Absolutely.
you. There's nothing behind you that says holidays.
Just the wall, yeah.
Yeah. And Brian, you're going to be taking us through this episode tonight, so I appreciate all your efforts in putting this together. Looking forward to it.
That's two of my favorite things, Disney MGM Studios and eating at Disney MGM Studios. So.
That's right. So, but as always, JT, you dove into the mailbag. We get letters. We get lots and lots of letters. And it's been a while since we've read some of these emails since we were busy with Retro Magic. And I will say, since this is the first episode back since we had Retro Magic, we hope to get on a little more schedule here. As many of you know, preparing for Retro Magic is a big endeavor for all of us, and it takes a lot of time. So we do get a little backlogged in our preparation of new episodes for you, but we've got a couple in the pipeline.
We got big things coming down the pipe. It's going to be a busy month because this
is.
episode's going to come out, and we're going to do our holiday live stream.
Yep.
We'll be announcing that, and we've got an interview lined up related to holiday offerings in the parks that we've talked about in the past, and Hal and I are already talking about the next episode he's going to do.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we'll say it. I'll promo it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's all right. It's going to be January, New Year's, so we're going to do the final third episode of Pleasure Island.
Look at that.
Where it was New Year's Eve every night.
Every night.
In fact,
Except for Wednesdays. No,
didn't we do the last time where we said we figured out the time you should start the episode at so it finishes and we say Happy New Year, right? Yeah, if you time it correctly. So maybe we'll have to do that again. 3, 2, 1. That's right, JT. And it is time to record new episodes because you know why, gentlemen? At Retro Magics, at all Retro Magics past, and you guys will laugh because I know you know this happened to me in the first one. I wore these shoes for a really long time and I lost feeling in both my toes.
Oh yeah.
And it took I still lose them now and then in these two particular pairs of shoes, but I have regained the very
Stop
tip.
wearing those shoes.
Oh no, it's other
I-
shoes. I'm just not used to. I just.
Do you
I'm
have
wearing
tennis shoes?
shoes.
Anything that looks nice, halfway
I'm
decent?
I'm gonna change it up next
I'm going to
time.
take you
gonna
shoe
go-
shopping. When
Yeah, it's
Get
time to
some,
go to
gel
Florsheim or something.
insoles.
Yeah, I need to go.
You could
get
just
rid of-
go barefoot. I don't think anyone would care.
Well, I do have an idea for the next Retro Magic. I think it might involve costume changes. I think I need a wardrobe change for decades, but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Complicate your day even
I wore
more.
2 different pairs of shoes. I had a
Yeah.
formal pair of shoes for my tuxedo night, and then I had a more casual pair of shoes that I wore with my suit.
I need to
I
go into
mean-
the more casual thing. So if we have any podiatrists out there, let me know. Hopefully there's no long-standing issues with the.
I think we do, actually.
Yeah,
Do we
I'm
have?
pretty
I know
sure
we have some
do a
dentists.
podiatrist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
But
I mean, in the meantime,
know.
we'll get some plush carpeting to put down on the stage.
thank you. Yeah, Todd's
Stagecraft.
sensitive. Yeah.
or we could have the ladies at what are they, the manicurist, the pedicurist, and the
Oh.
we could have like in the green room we could have
Just
one of those
waiting.
ladies
Right.
that sits there and you like
get a
put
bowl
your
of the
feet in a
fish.
thing full of fish.
Yeah, the fish come up and nibble
And
on
then
your.
they take them out and just rub your toes and
Yeah.
I think as a service, we should just have them on stage. And when people are doing their interviews, they could get a pedicure as we're interviewing them.
And then we'll get Todd's butler to bring us drinks.
That's right.
What a scene. Make sure this panel goes. I got to go get my pedicure right now backstage.
That's right.
my third toe on my left foot's a little numb. Gotta go
Oh
get
my
some
gosh.
some circulation.
That's right. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let's get to the mailbag before we really get off topic. We do have topics to talk about. So, JT, what do you have for us in the mailbag?
I've got a potpourri here of various things. Some visual aids will be on the show notes, or in the show notes, rather. First one, though, is from Mike. He wrote us back in September. It said, back before the Tomorrowland Terrace was renamed to Cosmic Rays Cafe, there used to be a stairway that went up from near the water bridge and into the back hallway of the terrace in Cosmic Rays. After they reimagined Tomorrowland, that stairway closed off, but the hallway in Cosmic Rays continues. Any details or memory of this? I don't know where the stairway went.
Yeah, so I spent some time online with him trying to figure out if I had pictures of the stairway, and I was never quite able to ascertain exactly where it was precisely we were trying to figure out there. So, it has been, I'll tell you, there used to be definitely more ways in and out. And we even found pictures. I found some pictures of the side that faces the castle, which used to be open air terrace, but it looks like it's been closed in the meantime, or at least it's been partially closed in to where they might be able to put up flaps during the summer. And I just haven't been there enough to see what's going on. But I mean, it used to be like legitimately a terrace, so you used to be able to go outside, and enjoy the 95-degree heat as you were trying to eat your hamburger, not your space dog and your lunar burger or whatever. And so yeah, I'm a little
Lunar Burger.
I'm a little it was called something like that. I can't remember. I remember it was a space dog. Something
With the turquoise
burger.
mayonnaise and the...
Yeah, exactly. Well, even before that, when I'll coming off of the Grill Master 3000 or whatever that thing, the Broil
Royal
Master. Yeah.
The Broil Master, whatever it was. Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess we need someone to come. One of our listeners who is an active, Magic Kingdom goer, to hit Cosmic Rays and walk that back hallway and see if I can. Like the hallway is definitely weird back by the bathrooms. When you go over into the restrooms, it's kind of this enclosed off kind of dark hallway now. I just can't remember what it was like before. So I don't know.
now I wanna check.
Still a mystery.
All right, well, we'll keep working on that, Mike. If anybody has any info on this, please call the Unsolved Mysteries hotline, and we'll figure that out for you.
978-71-RETRO. Leave a message and let us know.
There you go. I really thought you were going to state the Unsolved Mysteries number.
No, I never watched the show, but I know what our hotline is. So
There you go. Good. All right, next up, Amy. Amy wrote us. She says, a friend recently recommended your podcast, and I was excited to listen to the Disney Institute episode. Amy did the Disney College program from January to March of '97 and worked at the Disney Institute. I was hired as a housekeeper, but my supervisor knew that I was a hospitality management major, and she worked with the other departments to let me have a week or two of experience with many jobs like the front desk, pool service, restaurants, maintenance, interior design, and more. Soon after beginning work, I found out that Disney Institute cast members could take classes for free, and my guests only paid $10. They were just dying to fill those seats. I'm pretty sure not many cast members took them up on the offer, because in almost every class I took, the leader seemed surprised to have a cast member there. The classes I remember taking, who wants to take a guess at her first one?
Was it James Earl Jones?
Not James Earl Jones, but topiary. Brian
Topiary, I got it.
She took topiary.
Taught by James Earl Jones. You must now grip the leaf.
That's what they should have
With
had.
the shears.
More odd combinations, like Martin Scorsese teaches basketball.
Right. That would have been more interesting. I'm going to teach you something I have no idea about. We're going to figure it out together.
So she took topiary, photography. She was taken in through a back door into Epcot through the China Pavilion to practice her skills. Videography, several cooking classes, voice animation, stop motion animation, and of course, rock climbing. She did that mañana, actually. When my parents came to visit, we did a canoe adventure, made topiaries, and took a golf class. I was also allowed to use the gym and all the nice Cybex equipment, which they advertised, and attend the movies and lectures. Most of the classes I took had fairly few attendees. I remember loving the classes and thinking they were very high quality. Thanks for the episode and the trip down memory lane.
You're welcome.
Very cool.
The Disney Institute is the gift that keeps on giving.
It really
It
is.
just keeps coming back.
I know, right? Amy, cast member there. I find that so crazy that they just, come on down. We'll have you do this for free. And she sounds like she took advantage of that. All right, I'm going to just keep the trend going here, and I can only do this one more time. Another letter from Amy, but a different Amy. Hi, I really enjoy your show and have been listening and re-listening for years. I'm taking my kids to Disney World for the first time next month. She's been reminiscing about childhood trips throughout this planning process. She was a Florida resident and went often. Anyways, I was listening to episode number 32, Universe of Energy. This question was probably answered eons ago, or maybe I should say back in the dinosaur ages of your show. The T-Rex. The T-Rex song reference is from the 1978 album Our Dinosaur Friends by Pam Johnson, Eric Miller, and Wayne Parker. My school also did Dinosaur the Week in kindergarten, though the Triceratops was the only song that I retained after all these years. Thanks for the nostalgia, and keep up the good work.
I feel like on a subsequent episode after we talked about that I did mention that we had determined the album and the song. And
yeah, we did get into that.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah, it is on YouTube. The
album covers and stuff I think we put into the show notes. So we did get that one. But
thank you very much.
Yeah, it's nice to hear people go back and find the old stuff and somebody like, hey, I can answer that.
All right, next up, Sylvia. Sylvia wrote us recently, actually today. She has a couple questions she wants to ask us, and it's just like a stump the Bowers or stump the Brian here.
Stump the chumps.
Yeah, there you go. Sylvia wanted to know what happened to the Native American in the Magic Kingdom. Every Disney World visit, my dad would take pictures with this statue. However, in visiting this past September, we were unable to find him. And for context, it is the wooden, I think, looking cigar store type Indian almost or something. It's a painted red looking cape. In one picture, it's a turquoise cape. What happened to that guy?
I mean, there used to be two. There was one in Frontierland and one on Main Street. And if it's gone, I mean,
they were taken. I'd answered her today. They were taken, removed in the fall of 2018, and as part of Disney's ongoing efforts to avoid culturally sensitive landmines, since they were traditionally in front of tobacco stores because Native Americans traded tobacco with the Spaniards and the English and everybody else who came to the New World. So they became a symbol that was outside of tobacco stores. And the Magic Kingdom had tobacco stores at the time when it opened in 1971. And they were outside the 2 tobacco stores in the Magic Kingdom. And then as the tobacco stores closed, the Indian statue stayed there until 2018 when they were removed. The one's name was actually, the Disney named it, was Chief Seagar, S-E, as in cigar.
Sure.
I forget what the other one's name was, but...
All right, next part from Sylvia here. Sent us a picture wanting to know where it was. And we'll put it in the show notes, but Todd, I think you have the answer. You figured this out.
Yep. That's the Kitchen Cabaret queue. You can tell from the posters and the wrought iron railing that was a simulated outdoor facade area of a simulated city street, I guess you could say.
Sure enough,
in
that
Foodland.
is.
Yep. And the tile is a
looks
the
like a
tile
comedy
floor.
club. You're about to go up on stage at a comedy club.
Exactly.
At a cabaret.
Yep.
Oh, it was the street outside. It had all kinds of nice buildings and stuff. Yeah.
Was that carpet? How was that tile? Was that
That
carpet
is
to look
carpet.
like? It is carpet to
Yeah,
look
that is
like
carpet.
almost like
It
a tiled
looks like-
street.
yeah.
Tiled street rather.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's you know what? Of all the things I took pictures of in there, the carpet was not one of them. So I'm glad to see this picture.
Well, I think we need to replicate that. That would be a great shirt. Just this is my floor.
It just looks like
Another
but
coaster.
you probably made Futureport 82 is now like going to have to start over because we probably didn't know that the
carpet, what the
carpeting
carpet
looked
looks
that.
like. Yes.
Sorry,
All right.
Sean. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
All right, thank you, Sylvia. Appreciate all that. Quick one here. Emily wrote us. Emily was sporting her Dreamfinder watch at work back on Halloween. Sent us a picture of rocking the watch, and we do still have those for sale, don't we?
Yeah, we have a handful left, so you can get yours at lbvhistory.org/donate. So
Perfect Christmas gift for someone who's
absolutely.
habitually late or just likes to be stylish.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a good time to buy.
Oh,
See what I
I
did
like
there?
that.
Now is the time.
that was cool, Emily. Thank you for that photo. And another photo we still get these trickle in here and there. Paula wrote us from the photo center on Main Street in 1981, roughly. One of those vintagey photos on the back of the train
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Sent that in. And we add those to our collection. We're still building it.
The old-timey photos, yep.
Yeah. So thank you, Paula. Appreciate that. We always know you're a deep dive listener. If you caught that still, you're still, listening back catalog, and then you dig that photo out. That's appreciated, Paula. So thank you.
NBC
All right, last one.
NBC used to, when they would do reruns in the summer, when if you haven't seen it, it's new to you. So if you haven't heard the episode, it's new to you, even if it's 10 years old.
All right, last one here. This is wrote us back in October. This is from Donna. Donna recently found her podcast. She's working through the episodes anyway. She attached some photos, had no idea where they were because of episode 67's Wonders of Life. She finally knows where they are. From The Room with the Skew, her son, who is 2, loved the TV, watched our family on TV while we amused ourselves getting taller and smaller. We spent more time there than most people would have. So some fun pictures there. We can add those to our albums in the Epcot area. Her first visit, though, was to Disney in September or early October of 82 for the opening of Epcot. And we went on the Gold Key plan, Todd.
Oh, there we are.
Some Gold Key
Donna.
brethren.
I got somebody who's done it with me. So
They have a reunion. They have a reunion to go to.
also,
Donna and Todd ate 14 lobsters each for lunch, and that's. But that's another email. I'm learning so much from your podcast. I love the guest interviews. Keep up the great work. P.S. Brian, Unique Pretzels are not from Lancaster. They're made from my hometown of Reading, PA, which is the pretzel capital of the world. I don't know if those are fighting words or not, but what say you, Brian, to Donna?
Listen, since she's from Reading, we will meet at the Peace Pagoda, which is up on a hill and looks down on the city of Reading. And that's a peaceful place where I will cede that Reading, Pennsylvania. Well, first off, Unique Pretzels are absolutely from Reading, and they're delicious. So thank you for the correction. I will see that Reading calls itself the pretzel capital of the world. But in terms of actual manufacturing of pretzels, there's lots of big manufacturers in Lancaster and York and Berks and Reading's in Berks, but in neighboring counties throughout what they call the pretzel belt in Pennsylvania, and we can even put a link in the show notes to the fact that there is a pretzel belt, a series of counties and places in Pennsylvania where snacks, foods are made from Hershey's chocolate to potato chips and pretzels and things like that. But you are very lucky, Donna, to live in the pretzel capital of the world. That's probably news to Germany, who would want to fight with all of us about it. Like, hey, pretzels are our thing.
Not that again.
But, yeah. So it's, but personally, my favorites these days are the Utz sourdough specials. Come in a big container that I buy, and it takes me about a month to eat them. But I can't eat big hard pretzels anymore. That's the problem. They're too hard on my teeth. So as much as I would love a Snyder's of Hanover hard pretzel or those unique pretzels, they're too hard on my teeth now.
Well, I'll say you're both lucky to live in the pretzel belt.
I'll tell you that.
Do you live in the rubber belt, JT? Is that your...
They don't really we call it the rust belt.
Yeah, they're in the rust belt.
Because if you don't get your car oil sprayed in the winter, you could have a problem with all the salt and brine on the road.
There you go.
This year we tried fluid film. It's a new goo they spray on the bottom of the cars. It seems pretty sticky.
Todd's in the he's in the syrup belt, I think.
The syrup belt, yes.
Foliage. He's in the foliage belt.
Foliage belt, yeah.
Just go up and look at the leaves.
Yeah.
I do make pretzels, you guys know that, but I'm not gonna. We're not the capital up here.
Well, you might be the pretzel capital of New Hampshire. Might be your house.
It might be.
That's
it
true.
Might be, yes, definitely not syrup, but we produce both here in small,
I do love a good
artisanal
soft pretzel.
batches. So
yeah, soft pretzels are.
We
where
had
it's
them at the
That's-
office today. I could eat them every day. We did in elementary school. I don't know if this was a thing in the rest of the country, but in my Catholic school in the city and out in our public school out here, but the Catholic school in the city and the Catholic school in the suburbs I went to, the morning recess, they would take you got soft pretzels. Like you could buy a soft pretzel for 20 cents or whatever it was back then. And they would take, at the school out here, they would take your order and then a cloth bag would be hung on the door of the room so that at 10:30 or whatever when we had morning recess, if you said, I'll take one pretzel or two pretzels or whatever, but, the teacher handed out the pretzels. Well, they were frozen at 8 in. So sometimes you got one that was only kind of half defrosted. You'd be sitting there gnawing on it, but usually they were defrosted at that point. And,
It's room temperature.
Yeah.
So it's just this cloth bag of pretzels hanging from the door, not
hang from the
individually
door.
wrapped.
Oh, no, not individually. Come on, this was the 80s. There was,
and they were more foam than they were bread. I believe, too.
No, they were
those decent?
They came out all right.
Okay.
They tasted great to 9-year-old me, but
That's
yeah,
the
that's
pretzel
a standard
belt.
thing. And now there's a whole chain of places called the Philly Soft Pretzel Factory that are omnipresent around here. So soft pretzels are, in fact, a guy brought in 50 of them to the office today. So.
We were talking the other day how in elementary school for us, one of the big food incentives was pretzel rods. Teacher would give you one of those for doing a good job. And you sit there and scrape the salt off with your teeth and
positive reinforcement, JT. Positive reinforcement through treats.
Yeah, bite them in half. People store them in their desk with the pencils. All right, well, that's going to do it. Donna's going to end it. Thanks, Donna. Appreciate that. Let us know how the Pretzel Summit goes when that happens. And we'll look for any other listener mail. Now, keep in mind, we are back at it. We're getting into them here. We're catching up. So if you have anything you want to tell us, questions, comments, or photos or memories, send those our way. Podcast at retrowdw.com. There is a chance you could end up on the show, and you never know. If we don't get to it within a month, I may go back a year and find one for fun. So send away. Let us know what you got.
All right. Well, it is time for our main topic, and I see Brian sorting through his notes, which are efficiently for eco purposes printed on the back of bad faxes that he receives at the fax machine at the office. What is that? What do we have free estimates
This
for?
one is CRS Roofing.
Oh.
And it is roofing services, free estimates. I mean, I work in land development construction, so
They'll certainly find you.
Sometimes
yeah.
I get targeted ads. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if anybody in the Philadelphia area needs a CRS roofing number,
215-605-4418. It says here we specialize in commercial and industrial roofing.
Oh, so if
you
you
go.
have a tar roof or a metal
At
rubber.
the bottom, it says call today. We can start tomorrow! Exclamation point. But today is 2 words. Call
Today.
Today. Oh, right.
Oh, okay.
Like it's the 1930s. Yeah.
Yes. Call today and we'll get you right on our schedule.
I love that one. The old timey seafood where it's 2 words.
Seafood.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I can see that food.
We should do a whole thing on like tomorrow used to be 2 words too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Back in the old
Chicago
days.
Blackhawks were the Black Hawks for like 75 years, and then at some point they just became the Blackhawks.
They're like, oh, we're too tired of putting in the hyphen.
No, there was no hyphen. It was just 2 words.
Oh, just 2 words now.
Yeah.
That's because the
Two
space
words.
bar broke accidentally. So, all right, Brian. Well, you are going to take us through the history of food at the Disney MGM Studios during the opening time. So I'm looking forward to this. So, what did you find, and where do we start in all this?
Well, I guess we start on May 1st, 1989. And
That's a big day in history.
It is a big day in history. Hal Bowers had been up all night,
That's right.
and you can refer.
1989.
We'll
End
have
of the
to-
summer.
We'll have to throw a link into the show notes to the episode where he walked us through, excuse me, that experience. And if you remember, he was loaded with Imodium so that he could make it through the night, since they did not provide lavatory facilities for guys camping out in the parking lot to be first into the park when it opened on May 1st, 1989, the Disney MGM Studios that we're talking about here. And so I don't know how much eating Hal did that day inside the park. We do know that he got a very cold pie thrown in his face.
Yeah. I did have we can
Yeah,
as we
it
go.
was-
I remember going to the we went to the bar, got a drink at the bar, upstairs at the catwalk.
Well, I'm gonna cede that portion of it to you because I'm
Okay.
I'm dealing with the dining establishment.
Right,
so,
because
yeah.
I had just turned 21 that very the night before. April 30th was my birthday. May 1st they opened. Boom! So I got to have my first official, real, live, big boy drink, up in the catwalk. And
for that you should get like a Club 33 pass, just good for that location once to mark
Right.
the fact that you had your first legal drink there.
And and I have, as we go through this, it's like I took some pictures during the very early days of like the menu boards, and I don't even know why, but I have photos of lots of the early menu boards. So
What I figured we would do is walk you through the park as it existed that day. And so you would walk through the turnstiles after Michael Eisner and the first family cut the ribbon.
right,
and,
look out, Bob Hope, I'm coming through.
Yeah, and so you made your way through, and we're not going to focus on the stands, the kiosks, and the purveyors. What I can tell you is that at that time, there was no Coca-Cola sales spot there, and so my friend Bo, who has dutifully stood watch for the last 20 plus years, just inside the gates there, ready to deliver you delicious, refreshing Coca-Cola. He was not there the first 15 years of the park or 12 years of the park or whatever.
I think you might have been able to pick up like a bottle of Coke or something in Oscar's in the garage that's right there by
Yeah.
the
Where
but
they-
yeah, that
they rent
section
the
wasn't there.
strollers now, and
Yep.
because the stroller biz back then wasn't nearly as lucrative as it is these days. Kids used to walk, and or people would bring their own little umbrella strollers, and now there's 58,000 strollers. So anyway, so you'd come through and walk up and look at the times board to see where to go, and looking at your map, and right there off to your right would be the Hollywood Brown Derby, which is the flagship restaurant of the Disney MGM studios. And one of the things I'll note right as we begin this discussion, I talked today with Chef Raymond Pitts, who was the executive chef for the pre-opening, the 18 months prior to opening the park, and then for the park's first 7 years of operation until 1996. He was the guy that designed the menus for every restaurant and all the quick service places and all the food stands and everything that went on related to food in that park. It was Raymond and his team that did the work. So we had a nice chat today at the end of the show. There'll be about a 20-minute interview with him that is mostly him talking, and I'll kind of walk you through that before we run it at the end. But this was the flagship restaurant, and it was the first thing you kind of saw when you got to the end of Hollywood Boulevard there, where Hollywood and Sunset were. And how much of Sunset was there at that point, Howard?
None.
It was like a band shell there then, right?
Yeah, the original Theater of the Stars was there. So yeah, it didn't exist.
Yeah. So right beyond it was the Starring Rolls Bakery, which I wax poetic about a bit in my conversation with Raymond, because I think I've talked before. It was one of my favorite places to stop there and have breakfast when I would rope drop Disney MGM Studios. Was going there and have coffee and a pastry, and the pastries are always superb in there. But the Hollywood Brown Derby was the first thing you kind of saw off to your right, if you were looking straight ahead at the thing. And what I'm noting is that all of these restaurants are still there. And that is remarkable for a park that is now 33, 34 years old now, something like that. The park, the restaurants that open that park, not that the Magic Kingdom and other places don't have the same, I mean, they have dining establishments, but they've all gone through big changes, a lot of those locations over the years. And certainly by the time they hit 30 years, they had, switched out, and the Hospitality House became Tony's Town Square, and they've rethemed the Adventureland Terrace multiple times, and Cinderella's King Stephen's Banquet Hall became Cinderella's Royal Table, and here we're walking in, and the big opening restaurants, which were the Hollywood and Vine cafeteria, or Hollywood and Vine, it didn't become a buffet till later. 50s Primetime Cafe, Hollywood Brown Derby. They were there the day that it opened, and we'll get to the other two restaurants a bit later. But
I think the only thing, the sound stage is gone, but other than that,
well, we're going to get to the.
You're right. It's all there.
So the restaurants that were there then are there now in much almost identical form to what they were then. But let's talk about the Brown Derby, since it was the flagship restaurant. So it's based on, a Hollywood institution, the Brown Derby restaurant, which was still there when they were opening this park. There was one on Vine in Hollywood that Chef Pitts actually had flown out and, met with them multiple times and worked with them on some of the recipes. And they were famous for, among other things, their Cobb salad and the grapefruit cake. And the Cobb salad story, Raymond will tell again a little bit later in the show. The grapefruit cake, grapefruit diets were a fad of Hollywood celebrities back in the 30s. The thought process was that if you ate grapefruit before a meal, it in some way affected your digestive system so that you could go ahead and eat a steak and you wouldn't get fat. So they came up with this idea that we'll make a grapefruit-based dessert. Well, we'll just have a cake and put grapefruit on it, and these people will order it thinking it's in some way good for them. The yogurt's fat-free, Jerry. So they enjoyed that, and the grapefruit cake lives on. So the Brown Derby, you walk into it, and it is it's an Art Deco environment. And they designed a menu at that time. There was a big push in the late 80s, early 90s for healthy eating. So that is when steak kind of fell out of favor, and creams and butter sauces fell out of favor. And that's when grilled chicken and lean fish and rice cakes, remember those, Hal? All those things kind of had their moment. Popcorn as a snack, air popped popcorn. Oat bran had been kind of a mid-'80s thing, but there was this big push for low-fat, low-calorie in the late 80s. Or eggs suddenly became the devil. If you ate like one egg, you were going to have a massive coronary and die.
Pita bread which is mostly disgusting, was everywhere.
Yes. And whole wheat pasta was the first time anybody had kind of encountered that was in this time frame. So there was a big push to incorporate those kinds of things. Because remember, Wonders of Life opened the same time. And the culinary team had been tasked with, bringing better tasting, higher quality, healthier foods into the theme parks and into the resorts. So the Brown Derby, known as the home of the Cobb salad, the walls are covered with caricatures, which are all reproductions of the original of these Hollywood famous people from the 30s and 40s and 50s.
Do you know if they drew any themselves that were more recent, or were they all just they were reproductions of the
all reproductions of the original ones that were in the Vine Street location.
Is there a style for that caricature? How do you know?
I'm trying to think. The originals. I want to say that Hirschfield was somehow involved.
Yeah,
I can be completely off on that.
But not all of them. Like, he didn't draw them all.
Right.
But yes, they were. That was a big thing for him to do. And you either get hung in the Stage Deli in New York, or.
But I almost remember that style is kind of, you see it in some of the cartoons, like the Tom and Jerry's, the gangsters that come out, and it's just, you know what I'm talking about, that 20s and 30s style.
I mean, it is that style of caricature and drawing is very evocative of that time. Just just like all the Nickelodeon stuff, like Steven Universe, it's like looks very it's like that was the predominant style in the 80s. There was kind of a that is kind of the thing that happens with illustration and especially cartoons. It's like something gets popular, and then all of a sudden everyone, there's a rush and a clamor to have that style because it looks good. And so suddenly you've got a bunch of things that look like Ren and Stimpy in the early 90s, and then that dies out, and then suddenly something else looks popular. So
for people who don't know, I guess I should mention that the Brown Derby is a brown hat, the Derby hat, which is a certain style of hat, which if you've seen the Brown Derby, at one point there was a Brown Derby location completely shaped like the hat that you ate inside the hat. But in Disney's MGM / Hollywood Studios, it's on the sign, and
it was really funny because Universal ended up building a Brown Derby hat shop in the shape. So my expectation when I went to Disney, I expected it to look like a big hat, and it didn't look like a hat, and I was like, "What's this?"
Well, and at one point there were 4, 5, 6 different Brown Derby locations in Hollywood, so they didn't all look like hats, But Universal chose to copy that one, and they put Brown Derbies on everything. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Birnbaum's Guide to give you the setting. 224-seat restaurant is predominantly decorated in teak and mahogany. None of that has changed. And the elegant chandeliers and perimeter lamps are shaped like miniature derbies, and they are reminiscent of the original eatery. The china is embossed with the Brown Derby logo, and the hosts and hostesses are all dressed in black tie. The atmosphere is just about authentic, except for theme park clientele who show up in shorts and tennis shoes. All of that is accurate. Here's one I threw at the guys today. They talk about trying to set the scene in here. Even arch rivals Luella Parsons and Hedda Hopper, portrayed by convincing actresses, still reign over the restaurant from reserved tables, just as they did when the Brown Derby was in its heyday. So, to set the stage, Luella Parsons and Hedda Hopper were competing Hollywood gossip columnists who wrote for different, one wrote for Hearst and the other wrote for Knight Ridder or something like that. And they would break all the Hollywood news. Clark Gable's dating this person, and this person's pregnant, and this person's been let go from their contract by, Louis B. Mayer or something. And they wrote daily columns where they gave you the update, and they were celebrities in their own right, and they were competitors. In fact, they became fierce, bitter enemies over time. And I just think it's hilarious to me now to think like you're going in to have lunch at this nice place, and there's this person pretending to be in the 1930s, like, have you heard about the latest rumor about Carol Lombard coming up to your table, or like. And you said how this stuff was like omnipresent when the park opened.
I mean, my takeaway from the going on the first day was that there was no place for a respite. You would go, when I went up into the bar in the catwalk, all of a sudden a Streetmosphere person came up and started talking, as they do, very loud, going from table to table. And at that time, Disney, with all the explosions, it was like very different. It was like more stuff was in your face at Disney MGM than ever was at Epcot. So at some point you're just like, I just need to chillax for a minute and just try to come down. And immediately somebody is there of like, hey, and you're like, can you just leave me alone for 35 seconds so I can decompress?
That was like Todd's wife being stuck while we were riding Rise of the Resistance in Galaxy's Edge, and after 30 minutes of just sitting there listening to spaceships take off and wrenches being dropped and
she's like, I'm out of here.
Robots beeping. She's like, I have to get out of here. Like, there's no stopping this just constant din
it's
of stuff.
just the standard queue.
Just being in the land.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Unlike atmospheric,
like outside.
Unlike atmospheric music, which you get in most Disneylands. In their various theme parks. In Galaxy's Edge, you just get,
inundated.
It's like being in a ride queue, where
but having nothing else to keep you going.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is that constant din of spaceships taking off and landing.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be cooler if you were walking through and it was like, like you were walking through a Star Wars movie instead of actually being like
in a spaceport?
In a spaceport, yeah.
I always look up. You want to look up and but there's no spaceships taking off. There's just the sound, and it's so disappointing. Because
imagine walking down Main Street, USA, and when you approach the castle, all you heard were cows mooing and peasants working the land, and instead of swirly, majestic music. I mean it. The immersion.
I have one other little Brown Derby note here to go back, is that I only knew that the Brown Derby in California was shaped like an actual derby because I read my mom had Dennis the Menace comic books, and I used to pour through them as a kid. I still have them today, and there were a number of Dennis the Menace comic books where he went on journeys. They went to California, and they did these different things and road trips. And in it, they were driving by the Brown Derby. And I actually learned a lot of pop culture through Dennis the Menace. So I have to say thank you to Hank Ketchum for those wonderful comics. And if there's any listener out there that knows what I'm talking about, I'm probably the only person that is alive.
I cannot imagine taking that kid on a vacation. He's so exasperating just at home.
But they met up with Bing Crosby in that episode, in that comic book too. Yeah. They bumped into
Pally.
They didn't know until afterwards.
Hey, that kid just hurt me.
And I remember he was chewing like a piece of wheat or something in the comic book, and they're like, they wanted directions. I just lived down the road a piece was his line. Yeah. And then afterwards they realized that it was Bing Crosby. So anyway, I will find, if I can dig that out, I will scan it. It's a little hoot.
So besides the Cobb salad, which Chef Pitts will describe at the end of the episode, and the French dressing that they made there right on site, what else could you get at the Brown Derby dining at that time? Well, you could get fettuccine derby, which was pasta in a Parmesan sauce with chicken and red and green peppers. You could get a fillet of red snapper served with fresh buckwheat pasta. And the dessert tray is tempting. Try another Brown Derby institution, the grapefruit cake. It says that a kid's menu is available, though the formalish atmosphere may not enchant many youngsters. Here's one of my favorite things from it. Reservations are necessary. Walt Disney World Resort guests can make reservations up to 2 days in advance, but not on the same day, by calling 828-4000. Disney Village Hotel Plaza guests can also make reservations up to 2 days in advance by calling a different number, 824-8800. Other visitors must make reservations in person on the same day, open for lunch and dinner. Now, I did pull a couple of years later the Birnbaum out because I wanted write-ups on the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater and Mama Melrose's, which we'll get to, because they were not open there on opening day. That portion of the park wasn't done yet. But the write-up is almost identical. In fact, it's completely identical 3 years later. Like, Birnbaum changed nothing, even the references to Luella Parsons and Hedda Hopper, which I thought was kind of funny, that they just we'll just copy and paste. And
well, I guess if it didn't really change that much, then it is
do you think that Luella Parsons and Hedda Hopper were still there 3 years later?
That's a good question. You know, I'd say they definitely went hard the first year.
Yeah.
And then things probably, calmed down, and I think probably after getting some guest surveys of can you just give us a moment?
Maybe.
They probably pushed it all mostly back out onto the street. So
maybe for the next Retro Magic, we can hire Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons to just come in and walk up to random people's tables in the middle of somebody's presentation on stage and be like, hey, let me tell you what I heard about Bing Crosby.
He really lives down the road a piece.
Yeah, he's got this fella Dennis visiting him. That's right. It's a menace.
Literally streetmosphere just coming to your table, no matter what the content is.
just bugging the hell out of you. It's worse than Goofy coming over.
I don't care. I'm trying to listen to Tony Baxter. Please leave me alone.
Have you Horizons, though? It's going to close soon. Why are you talking like old Hollywood? You're from the 80s. I don't know. See? It's
like this. Just give it to me straight. You're washed up. You finished.
Yeah.
Just tell me, what's the word on the street?
So if you walked out of there, out of the Brown Derby, and were looking straight across, there'd be a store in front of you. And through the two walkways around that store, you would end up around Echo Lake, where Gertie the dinosaur is. And around Echo Lake were two restaurants. The 50s Primetime Cafe was is a very, very popular choice. And then the Hollywood and Vine Cafeteria of the Stars, which was a cafeteria-style restaurant. And I mentioned them together because they're all one building and they share a kitchen. And that's how most of those restaurants were designed. The Brown Derby shared a kitchen with the Soundstage restaurant behind it, and also the Starring Rolls Bakery Cafe. They were all, if you kind of looked, the back end of those, all three eateries backed into a kitchen area that could be shared by the three of them.
Oh, that really makes sense.
Yeah. And so they did the same thing. I mean, even today, the 50s Primetime Kitchen shares the kitchen with the Hollywood and Vine. So Chef Pitts will tell you in his interview that the Brown Derby was the hardest restaurant in terms of opening the park, but the 50s Primetime Cafe was the one that he had the most fun with. And you can get that because it was probably the first outside of let's think about this, Howard. Outside of the Hoop-de-Doo review, would this be the first in theme park interactive kind of dining experience? I'm thinking of everything that's in Epcot.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the German, but that's a show on stage. Like they're not.
Yeah. I'll tell you, when they first opened, they didn't go as hard on the whole mom thing as I think they did later on. Because my recollections of eating there in the early days is, you know, they were as if it was the 1950s, but they didn't go into any of that stuff of like, oh, you know, you don't get to eat until you've washed your hands and what kind of soap is in the soap dispenser. Like none of that foolishness.
Yeah,
like
that was
what you get at the Whispering Canyon. Like that wasn't in play yet.
Yeah. So the write-up, and, you know, just so you know, I mean, you're walking into this place and you walk in first in the little bar area, the little reception and bar area, and it's a wonderful bar.
The Tune-In Lounge.
The Tune-In Lounge.
I still have to have a drink there.
That's a less enjoyable experience than actually walking in and looking at the bar.
Yeah, because
there's all these
overloaded.
People waiting for the tables, and it's overloaded, and people deciding to have dinner. It's always a mess.
Yeah.
COVID messed it up too. I don't know if it's back.
But the thought of having a drink there is always nice. Like you think, like, this is the bar I want in my basement, which is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like Dad's basement bar or living room bar.
And this was the first park, I think, where they really did integrate lounges with the restaurants, where you could go have some place to sit, you know, an adult drink and a beverage as you were waiting.
Well, the all the seating, it was like, you know, like a living room. Like there was little couches,
Still
and
is,
end tables, coffee tables. It just felt like you're in a living room. And
But I do believe they took away the bar stools around the bar, and it's still gone to this day.
Okay. So the write-up in Birnbaum's for the opening year was, the setting is straight out of the favorite sitcoms of the 1950s. Each of the plastic laminate kitchen tables is set under a pull-down lamp, and the idea is to evoke a suburban kitchenette. Video screens set all around the room show black and white clips, all related to food, from favorite 1950s TV comedies, and these nostalgic bits are visible from each of the 226 seats. We're listening, the Brown Derby's 224. The placemats pose television trivia questions, and the meals are served either on Fiestaware plates or TV dinner style on 3-compartment trays. The waitresses play mom, in quotation marks, with considerable enthusiasm. They make recommendations and encourage guests to clean their plates or no dessert. The menu is packed with comfort foods. For openers, there's alphabet soup, vegetarian chili, the French fry feast, which stayed on the menu for many years, served either plain or with chili and cheese. Specialties of the house include magnificent meatloaf made with fresh veal and shiitake mushrooms and served with mashed potatoes and mushroom gravy. Broiled chicken and spuds. Those are potatoes for those of you listening internationally and don't know what spuds might be in American lingo. Chicken pot pie and Granny's pot roast. So menu hasn't changed too much over the years. A lot of these are still there in one form or another. But I have a story about this next line. There are also burgers and a variety of toppings, turkey burgers, hot roast beef sandwiches, club sandwiches, Aunt Selma's chicken salad, and the apple a day TV tray, which is an apple served with cottage cheese and assorted fruits. Milkshakes, ice cream, sodas, and root beer floats are filling accompaniments. And when you've finished everything on your plate, Mom will ask if you'd like dessert. I'm going to stop here for a second. The part I was going to bring up was the burger. When I was there with my nephews about 5 years ago, one of my nephews, like, he was in the phase where for like 18 months he would only eat cheeseburgers. Like, that was like, anytime, Luke, what do you want? A cheeseburger. All he ever wanted was cheeseburgers. And so we're down there at Walt Disney World and in the Disney MGM studios and having lunch at 50's Primetime Cafe. And for a period of time, Disney took the burger off the menu. But the Birnbaum guides of the maybe late 90s or early 2000s would say you could still get them. You could ask for them and they would still make them for you. But they didn't want the place to be known as a burger joint. And I'm dating it's either late 90s or the early 2000s, and so I just said to Luke, well, why don't you, when the waitress came over, when Mom came over, I said, well, why don't you ask? And she's like, well, ask what? What do you want to know, honey? Well, he wants to know if he can get a cheeseburger. She said, we don't have any burgers on the menu here. I've been here for, I don't know what she said. We've never had a burger on the menu here. And, I was not going to get into an argument with Mom. I argue with my own mother enough. But I didn't need to argue with fake Mom. But I was like, I've been coming here for 20 years. Like, I know you had burgers before. Anyway, he found something else to eat on the menu. I don't remember what we got him. I just remember my sister wasn't thrilled with the choices. That she didn't want pot roast or chicken pot pie or something. She was upset at the lack of an ability to get like a grilled chicken something or other there.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and on the desserts, it runs through and says standouts include s'mores. You'll feel like you're back at summer camp, and then it explains what s'mores are. A graham cracker topped with chocolate and toasted marshmallows. Sundaes, banana splits, and strawberry rhubarb pie. Beer and wine are served. A children's menu is available. And then it gives all the normal, 2 days in advance you can make reservations if you're staying at a Disney hotel.
So I have photos that I took of the menu board outside and here's the part that could be a little mind-blowing. So, like the broiled chicken is $14.50. The chicken pot pie is $8.50. The Granny's pot roast is $8.95. The apple a day that you mentioned,
yes,
$6.50 for an apple and cottage cheese. So that must have been really something.
I wonder what that 1989 inflation calculator is there. $6.50 in 1989.
Oh, I have the inflation calculator. I can get that out. Yeah,
I have to look at that and see what they were going for. I'm not a cottage cheese fan, so
that's $15.
It's one of the few old people foods that I don't particularly enjoy. I've tried to like it, but I just can't.
That's $15, almost 16.
All right, scoop of cottage cheese, an apple, and I don't know what the other fruits are, but
geez, yeah,
You're paying for the prep and the service. That's what we're paying for.
That's an expensive apple. But one of the things that I think was neat about this restaurant, I will say, is like they took normal comfort foods, meatloaf, pot pie, and elevated it. I think that was really the it really wasn't your mom's meatloaf. It was really a super high quality meatloaf,
right,
in comparison,
and made with a higher quality meat, and so you weren't getting ground chuck or something like that.
Yeah.
In there, and they were using veal, and they were.
I mean, I will say, given all of the restaurants, property wide, obviously it's not like we're not comparing to Shula's, but if you're just going to go walk into a restaurant, the food there was really higher quality, I think, and more innovative than probably any of the other parks at that time.
And I think when you hear Chef Pitts talk about it a bit, I mean, that was, it was a product of 18 months of planning, and this was the park we all know Michael Eisner, personally tasted every dish. There were tastings for him and other executives before they were allowed to be put on the menu. They had to approve everything. They wanted this to be, this was the first park he built from scratch. And these were, they had high expectations for this, and they wanted it to be high quality, and money was, cost was no object. And it was originally built as a half-day park. It was an add-on. It was expected that you would come there, do the studio tour, have a couple of other attractions, either have lunch or dinner there, and then go spend more of your vacation at Epcot and the Magic Kingdom and the other things that they were doing there.
Right. One thing that did really work in its favor is the Fiestaware. The new revitalized version of Fiestaware had literally just come out the year before. So they were able to get new Fiestaware for the tableware, which wouldn't have been available otherwise. And the same thing, the boomerang Formica top, like they had just reintroduced that as a pattern that you could get like right when that park was opening up. So it was sort of like the perfect culmination of all those things happening at one time.
And I am going to call those things, I think you'll agree with me, Howard, I'm going to call them the Back to the Future effect, because there was that period in the 80s, Back to the Future, and Peggy Sue got married, and you can probably think of 2 or 3 others I'm not thinking of. Not as much Happy Days and American Graffiti. They were before that.
Right.
But there was then this, period of time where, the adults of the 50s or rather the kids of the 50s were now the adults of the 80s.
Right.
And just the way that there's a fascination with the 80s now, but not nearly as much 80s culture out there as I would like, Where's my 80s restaurants and things like that? We're not getting
to
those
the Cafe
yet.
80s.
Yeah, well, right. But there was the 50s style diner became kind of an omnipresent thing in the late 80s, early 90s. That was a motif that permeated. And so this going in there, I would certainly think that that Formica pattern and the Fiesta ware coming back were all part of that rebirth.
Definitely. Pee-wee's Playhouse. It's like there was that thing of looking back, and I see this pattern over and over again, is looking back 30 years and bringing these things.
Yeah.
As professionals go into the design thing, they look back at the things that inspired them as kids. They start hitting thrift stores and they start reinventing that and bringing it back again. Yeah, 100. You are dead on. That is exactly what that was. I can't think of any like 80s restaurants or foods though that could be inspiring to revitalize again. That's a fascinating idea though.
Yeah, well, I just mean in terms of theming, and I guess the barcades and things like
anymore.
that, the barcades and
Yeah.
stuff like that are
you
kind of lean into it.
Yeah, you see
But-
that vaporware kind of style, the squiggly lines and some of the colored
Yeah.
things. But yeah.
But those 50s places were always decked out in actual artifacts from the 50s, and not so much the menu. Because the menu was always burgers and fries, and it was the 50s primetime menu, but more of a diner type of thing. The food wasn't so much of an innovation as the decor, as the immersion theming, and that's where if you really wanted to have an 80s restaurant, just add a smoking section back to restaurants of today. And everybody just sitting there going,
We'll just remove this 1-foot divider between you and we'll create.
Yeah, that's
I guess
that would literally be the gag every time anybody's seated, though. It's like, do you want smoking or not? And people are like, wait, what? And like, God, just kidding. We don't have that still.
I guess in the 80s, the prevalent restaurants were like Sizzler, and so there just isn't anything.
Well, yeah, that was
awesome
kind
to,
of
like, bring forward.
Outback Steakhouse was kind of
Late 80s, yeah.
made its debut. And
But Hard Rock was, Hard Rock and Hollywood. Hard Rock had been around a while. That was the first. But then you had Hollywood. You had
but
Rainforest
they were like big
Cafe.
cities. They were big cities. They didn't build that in Akron.
No, right.
They built it in Cleveland. It
Yeah.
was, so you're trying to put it into perspective of the kind of, Bennigan's and places like that were just kind of around. But I'm not sure. It would have to be a new concept, but you just have to kind of figure out what goes all over the walls and
Walkmans.
Walkmans and
Walkmans
Rubik's
and
cubes
grids
and wacky
and, yeah.
walkers and.
Lots of
Pop
neon.
Century.
Your menu's a trapper keeper, that kind of stuff. It's I got a gold idea here, Jerry. It's gold. I'm telling you. Anyway, as I mentioned, it shared a kitchen, still shares a kitchen with the Hollywood and Vine. But the Hollywood and Vine then was not a buffet like it is now. Now it is a character buffet. Well, it's not a character every meal now, but it's a buffet, and when it opened, it was cafeteria style. So the write-up one, it says, the distinctive Art Deco facade ushers guests into a contemporary version of a 1950s diner. all stainless steel with pink accents. An elaborate 42 by 8-foot wall mural depicts notable Hollywood landmarks, including the Disney Studios, Columbia Ranch, and Warner Brothers, back when they were the only studios in the San Fernando Valley. At the center of the mural is the Fox Carthay Circle Theater, where Snow White premiered in 1937. That location has 368 seats, which is surprising to me because it seems smaller than the Primetime Cafe to me. But
It's but it's got a huge outside too.
yeah, it does have that whole front like porch type thing. The 368-seat cafeteria presents a varied menu at breakfast. There's the Hollywood Scramble, 2 eggs served with bacon or sausage and a choice of potatoes or grits and a breakfast biscuit. All the usuals: French toasts, pancakes, omelets, lox and bagels, assorted hot and cold cereals, and fresh fruit. You looking at the menu? Is that
$5.25 for the scramble?
Wow. Muffins, Danish, and croissants are also served. Lunch features a variety of salads, including the Seafood Serenade, which is a grilled salad of shrimp, grilled tuna, crab, and greens served with a Cajun remoulade sauce or remoulade. Now,
Oh yeah,
Chef,
$9.95 for that.
so one of the big things that people may remember is that late 80s, early 90s, when Boston Market came into its own, a big thing was the rotisserie chicken. And this location had rotisserie chicken and rotisserie meats. And so baby back ribs, roasted chicken, steak, and tortellini are also served midday. The dinner menu adds prime rib, veal chops, and mesquite grilled pork chops. Raymond mentions at the end of the episode he loved the rotisserie chickens in here because people could walk in and see them going around that rotisserie conveyor belt. You know, like what was the one they sold for home? Was it the Showtime?
The rotisserie grill, the Ron
The Ronco, I think it was called the Showtime.
Yeah.
Right.
And you could rotisserie your own chicken at home instead of paying $4 at Costco now.
And Brian, we can't forget that before it was Boston Market, it was Boston Chicken.
Boston Chicken, absolutely, it was Boston Chicken.
I never understood why they wanted to do that, but I guess they wanted you to realize that you could get meatloaf there. So.
That was the big thing that people didn't want to just go to a chicken place. That's what Kentucky Fried Chicken was for, and then it became KFC. But I mention that because on the 50s primetime menu, broiled chicken and spuds was one of the options, and I am sure there was a shared kitchen thing going on where they were taking some of the rotisserie chicken and utilizing it next door at the 50s primetime cafe.
Yeah.
But homemade pies, How headed the dessert list at this location.
I'm trying to see if I have it here.
Love a breakdown on the pies.
I don't have the dessert menu. They didn't put that outside.
Dessert always gets the short shrift at these places.
There's usually so here's the thing. At the bottom of the menu that was outside in little letters, it just says, featuring a cast of scrumptious desserts, assorted beverages, draft beers, and wine by the glass. So you'd have to go in to find out what they had.
It's funny because I do have Scott Joseph, who is still doing restaurant write-ups and is on Twitter, and he was the Orlando Sentinel's restaurant critic at the time. I don't know if he still works for the Sentinel or not. I think he does. But he still covers food in Orlando now, 35 years later. And I have his initial write-up of the restaurants at Disney MGM Studios as well. And on the Hollywood and Vine cafeterias, there are rows of rotisserie filled with herb chickens to tempt you. The smell of hickory smoked ribs, $9.75, got the better of me, however, so I had to have some. The meat was lean, and though it wasn't quite falling off the bone, it was pretty tender. Instead of being smothered in barbecue sauce, they were served just lightly brushed. Servers automatically give a dish of extra sauce for folks who feel the need to slather on a little more. Go ahead if you want to, but this sauce is one of Chef Pitt's ways of reducing your calorie and sodium intake. And instead of French fries, have the grilled sweet potatoes for $1.35. They're delicious and better for you than something that has been boiled in oil. So, I mean, they make the Hollywood. I don't mind. I've been to Hollywood and Vine a few times with my younger family members. We've done the buffet there. It's not something I tend to do with adult companions, but the food's always been good there.
So that's interesting that they shifted from cafeteria to buffet at some point.
Well, there was a period of time where they were it became Hollywood and Dine, and that was a character breakfast. It's still, I mean, the location is Hollywood and Vine still,
Right.
but the breakfast or meal itself, I believe, was called Hollywood and Dine, like Minnie's Manahuna breakfast or whatever the other character meals are named. And so Mickey and Minnie and these others would come around dressed in Hollywood clothes and visit the tables. I don't know. And then eventually it was there'll be people that write in and tell us. At some point, I feel like it was a Disney Junior breakfast. You went in there and like Doug and people walked around and said hello to you. I don't remember. I know I went to it and there were characters, but I don't remember who they were, to be honest with you. And I know during COVID they stopped the characters. I think for a while it was closed altogether, but it is. I know it's open now, and if they should bring the rotisseries back, maybe that was kicking it back to the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So the other place that you mentioned, which, we'll pour one out for, that was there on opening day, was the Soundstage restaurant. And this is a very interesting concept. So to tell people where it is, if you walked through the Disney MGM Studios arch, which now says Disney Hollywood Studios on it, behind the Brown Derby, you would end up in the courtyard. And standing there today, you would look to your left, and the bones of the former Voyage of the Little Mermaid, right?
Yeah.
Was the name of the stage show,
Yep.
which may or may not be coming back. I want to say I read at some point they were casting for that again. I might be wrong. This is not a news show, but and then straight ahead was part of the studio tour, right? But
Right.
now is the Star Wars gift shop, and then off to the right would be the Disney Junior live on stage and some meet and greet areas for some of the Disney Junior characters. But at this time when the park opened, off to your right, that was the Soundstage restaurant. Now, Howard, do we want to take a break here? Because between the two was the stairwell to take you up to the Catwalk Bar, which was over top of the Hollywood Brown Derby. Which is now the entrance to the Club 33 lounge that is in Hollywood Studios, but for 20 plus years was the closed, shuttered bones of the Catwalk Bar. So tell us about the bar and the drink and your visit there.
Yeah, so you would you could go through the Brown Derby, or you could go through the Soundstage and make a right. If you go through the Brown Derby, I believe you make a left and go sort of where the bathrooms are.
Yep.
And those went into a common hallway because, as Brian said, those buildings are all connected. And in that hallway, there was a staircase with a sign that directed you to go up to the catwalk, or you could get into a elevator.
Or you could get on one of the 9 telephones that was on the wall there.
Right. And you would make your way upstairs. And the catwalk was sort of set up like a prop storage area. So you would walk in and there were cages with, statues and different, paraphernalia that with tags on them, as if, a movie company could come in and say like, oh, I want to rent that and that and that and that for my show. And then so there were a bunch of tables. It was kind of like a big U that would go and look down on where the soundstage was. So when the soundstage opened with Big Business, you'd see sort of like the set pieces of Big Business and the people eating downstairs. And there was just a bunch of tables up there, and they had some cocktails and some beverages available, beer, wine, and some specialty drinks. And it was a nice out of the way place.
Do you remember what you ordered?
I don't. I have somewhere I have the menu, but I can't remember what it is that I actually ordered for that drink. I remember it was not particularly good, and I'd say the irony of all this is as good as the food is, during this time period, the drinks are typically kind of awful, as most of the 90s cocktail scene was at that time. So
Yeah,
It was
I remember
it
your
was a lot of
breakdown
the
of that.
yeah
during the
syrupy,
during-
messy drinks and stuff.
Well, and I remember you making that observation when we were going over the stuff
Pleasure
at
Island,
Pleasure
yeah,
Island.
same time period. Lots of Midori and just kind of terrible. It was not very balanced back then. Everything was like very sweet or very sour. There was never an attempt at that time to just make something that were like, oh, this is just enjoyable. But it was a cool place to hang out.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about all of these reviews is that they don't review the cocktail lounges. They kind of, the write-ups of the time tend to focus on the restaurants and not so much the
Right.
drinking establishments, which is not surprising. But yeah, around the corner from the Brown Derby and the Catwalk Bar was the Soundstage Restaurant, and the Soundstage Restaurant was a really interesting concept. It was set up initially to duplicate a typical rap party, WRAP, like a production is wrapping up, not that Kool Mo D and LL Cool J are going to come in and start a rap party. A final feed celebrating the end of a shooting of a film. Guests would enter the 560-seat restaurant through the back of a set. When it opened, its theme was inspired by Touchstone's film Big Business, starring Lily Tomlin and Bette Midler, leading to a carpeted hotel lobby set with hosts and hostesses in black and white catering costumes. This is a food court, and there are 3 distinct areas. At the pizza and pasta shop, deep dish pizza, linguine, tortellini, and a cold pasta salad are on the menu. The sandwich shop serves 3 options, including a meatball sub, chicken salad, and the Soundstage Special. By the way, this lasted a long time. Thinly sliced salami, pepperoni, and beer chicken. I will spell it for people unfamiliar with German meats like me. BIERSCHINKEN. With Jarlsberg and smoked Swiss cheese. The soup and salad shop serves chef salads, chicken salad with vegetables, New England-style clam chowder, and chicken broth with tortellini. PB&J sandwiches are available for the kids at each stand, and dessert offerings are the same at all 3 stations. Toffee cheesecake, chocolate chip pie, and coconut cream pie. No reservations necessary. So that was the Soundstage Restaurant. Now, if you were to jump ahead 4 years to, I think this was from 1994 when I pulled the next set out. The write-up is a little bit different because the setting of this 560-seat restaurant is from Aladdin, because they had started doing an Aladdin character breakfast in there, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And this is where guests can find Aladdin, Jasmine, the Genie, and Jafar, who are often available for photo opportunities. Music from the film plays all day, which must have been awesome for the people who work there. This is a food court, and there are 3 distinct areas. And then they kind of repeat everything I just said. All the sandwiches and the food are the same at this point, and the desserts are all the same. So I don't know if the menu actually changed, but according to Burn Bombs, after 4 years, it had not.
I kind of remember at some point there was like a noodle station or something in one of them. But it's
Noodles did, well, what was it? Tomorrowland Terrace, when they did the refurb in 94,
Right.
They turned it into the noodle station, right?
Yeah.
Noodles came into their own in the mid-90s. It was big noodle time. I will mention, for the good of the order, when the park opened, the Disney MGM Studios, you had Dinosaur Gertie's was there, and in Echo Lake, serving ice cream. In fact, it said ice cream on her back at that time, and Hal and I figured out that was gone by 95 or 96 that had been removed from the back.
Yeah.
From her spine.
Potentially earlier, but definitely by 96.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things is if you think Gertie's now, you think of soft ice cream. And soft ice cream was the one thing that Gertie's didn't sell back then. Gertie's at that time sold ice cream bars, fruit yogurt bars, ice cream sandwiches, and frozen bananas, which were notable enough for Scott Joseph to actually write about them. He said, you'll find, ice cream items similar from other parks. However, a new item that they vend is an all-natural frozen banana for $1.60, covered in milk chocolate and crushed peanuts. It's a nice alternative to ice cream. Excuse me. The winter does a number on my sinuses and all. And in keeping with the more healthful bent, be careful, you could chip a tooth on this banana. Now, one of the reasons I find it interesting is, and this is a call out there to the West Coast people, but frozen bananas were a thing because they're a Balboa Island and they're definitely like a West Coast thing, but they were on like our boardwalks at the Jersey Shore. They were a big deal in the 70s and 80s, and I know they were in Walt Disney World and like the Magic Kingdom because I literally just posted a set of slides from the early 80s and I called it Frozen Banana Family because it's a family and there's a picture of them all eating their frozen banana. So maybe this one's different because Raymond redesigned it with some more pure chocolate than they were using on the other ones, or they were hand dipped and not whatever. But they were not an innovation for Disney parks. They may not have been in Epcot, but they were definitely in the Magic Kingdom in the 70s and 80s because I have pictures of people eating them. But it was just interesting that he noted that in his article, like, oh, hey, they got these frozen bananas as a nice alternative.
It's funny. I'm looking at the logo that was on the sign, the price sign, and Gertie is licking a popsicle, not eating an ice cream cone. So, there you go.
They did not put because I think now you can get like a frozen lemonade bar or something, like the frozen lemonade or something from there out of a cooler. But really, it's primarily a soft ice cream purveyor. They might have Mickey bars or something there too, but it's primarily known for its soft ice cream. And my recollection is it really only has soft ice cream and like water and I think the frozen lemonade or something like that. But back then there was no soft ice cream machine in it. It was all other ice cream treats that were vended. Yeah. So I found that interesting. But there were, the other places in the park. Min and Bill's was there serving, that menu has rotated a lot over the years where it's, hot dogs and sandwiches and some specialty items. And they seem to change that menu every 4 or 5 years. They just like completely redo it. And that's the ship that faces the main studio courtyard that's also on Echo Lake. So that's one dining establishment. And then once they built Sunset Boulevard, because that was 94, I think they did the Tower of Terror and Rock and Roller Coaster. And they built Sunset Boulevard and they did that whole Fairfax Fair Market down there of, a variety of quick service locations where you could get burgers and chicken, and the fruit stand is down there, and that's where you can get pickles in the park now. And but much of the back of that park, the Muppet Vision and all that wasn't there when the park opened. They opened those in the coming years. The next few years, they tended to flesh out more of the back of the park and start to build things there. There were a couple reasons for that. The Muppet, they hadn't finished the deal with Henson when Jim Henson passed away. So they were doing some projects with them, but they had not actually concluded their deal with Henson for everything they were going to do with the Muppets in the parks. And I'm telling you this as a setup to talk a little bit about Mama Melrose's Italian restaurant. That was one of 2 restaurants that opened in 1991 in the parks. And my notes here. Let me look real quick. The Mama Melrose's opened in September of 1991. And a few months before that, the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater opened in April of 1991. I mentioned earlier the original concept for this was it was designed as a half-day park. It was designed as kind of an enticement to keep you there for another day and to give you something to do, but it was not expected to fill a full day for a family the way that Epcot or the Magic Kingdom were, as it was originally designed. The park proved to be extremely popular, so as within months of it opening, Eisner and company said, "Let's put more stuff in here. Let's we have to satiate people's desire to come to this," and so they begin working on making it a full day park, doubling the number of sit down eateries. So that was the first thing that they did, and the Muppet area is where Mama Melrose's sits, and Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater is on the way. So you would walk past what is now the ABC Commissary and Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater down that pathway to get to the area where Star Tours opened, and then beyond Star Tours would be Muppet Vision and the courtyard area behind Muppet Vision where Mama Melrose's is. So let's kind of take them in order. The ABC Studios Commissary is a quick service location. It's always been one that I kind of favor because I can always find something there. Prior to Disney purchasing ABC in 1996, it was the Disney MGM Studios Commissary for the first 5 years of its life. 550 seats, chicken salad, teriyaki burgers, chicken breasts, sandwiches, stir-fried vegetables, vegetarian chili, an efficient quick service spot on the back half of the park at that point. Next to it, sharing a kitchen with it, is the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater, which really, when it comes to themed dining experiences, especially in a park, that might be the apex of, like, Disney just was like firing on all cylinders. So they designed this restaurant that makes it look like a movie set. Where you check in, you're kind of backstage. You can see the backside of the sets, and they left them exposed like they're, the carpenters were just finished up in there, putting up the plywood sets. And then they go to seat you at your table, which there are a bunch of the tables are modeled after cars. And so it's like you're sitting in a car. It's a great place to eat if you're dining with people you don't particularly care for and don't want to have to make conversation, because if you're in, 6 seats, or I think that were 3 rows or 4, I don't remember, but let's say it's 3, it's 2 seats, like 3 benches in a row, all facing parked like they're parked in a drive-in, facing a movie screen that runs a loop of 1950s and 60s, B-movie sci-fi clips. And a lot of them are trailers, and
some good cartoons in there too.
There are, and
Yeah.
it all kind of, but it's great because you sit next to the person you can tolerate the most, and then you really don't have to talk to the other people that you're with because the movie's there to distract you, and you're not facing them anyway. Either they have to turn around in their seat to talk to you, or you have to turn around in your seat to talk to them. So it's a great place for antisocial families or families that don't like each other, or if you just need a break. You guys are all there. So it is a little gift to the introverts in all of us. The first Birnbaum's write-up on it says, this 250-seat eatery recreates a 1950s drive-in theater. The tables are actually flashy 1950s-era cars, complete with fins and white walls. Fiber optic stars twinkle overhead in the night sky, and there are real drive-in theater speakers mounted next to each car. All the tables face a large screen where a 45-minute compilation of the best and worst of science fiction trailers and cartoons play in a continuous loop. Popcorn is served before the meals, which includes the Monster Mash, which is a sloppy joe made with turkey. It's a turkey sloppy joe. Tossed in space is the huge chef salad. and They Grow Among Us is a sampling of fruits. The Red Planet is an assortment of vegetables with linguine, and Meteoric Meatloaf is made with smoked meat. There are also hot and cold sandwiches and a variety of desserts, including Cheesecake That Ate New York, Twin Terrors, a banana split, Science Gone Mad, a mixture of fruit cobblers, and When Berries Collide, a strawberry shortcake. There's also a children's menu. It is moderate to expensive, open for lunch and dinner. I have a love-hate relationship with this restaurant because in recent visits, I've just had terrible meals there. Like the atmosphere is great, it's fun, and then the food comes out, and I'm like, ugh, why am I eating here? Like,
Yeah, I've been there a couple times. It's been up and down. I've had some pretty terrible ones. They used to have a wonderful chopped salad with steak on it. It was really, really good, and it didn't have that. I think it's gone a little more pub
Disney dining plan.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's actually, when you look at the menu, it's actually themed more towards a takeout or towards a concession type stand now, with a lot of different types of, fried foods and things like that. But it was okay. I mean, it was, when we were down there in April with some family members who had never dined there before, they said it was a lot of fun. I wouldn't go back because the food wasn't what I expected. So
when they opened it, Raymond had actually created a cream of popcorn soup, which sounds really interesting. But I'm assuming, it's basically a corn chowder of some sort or something. It's got to be a play on that.
Right.
That had some popcorn maybe sprinkled on top of it. But
yeah, when it opened, I felt the menu was very similar to dine-in. Again, it was, comfort foods, but elevated.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of, it's a shame that it kind of backed off into something a little more pedestrian. But
So
I guess that's kind of the way things went there.
And while we're here, before we jump to Mama Melrose, I want to mention that the chocolate molds for the dessert specialties that they had made at these places, he did them for the 3 recipes down there using an outfit whose name escapes me at the moment, but he mentions it in the interview you're going to hear at the end of the episode. And the derby hat, I remember. There was a derby hat dessert, and there was a fully molded chocolate derby hat that was part of, I think, like an ice cream sundae type thing. Then at the 50s prime time, there was a hot rod car, like a 1950s car. They call it a 57 Chevy in some of the articles of the time, but looking at it, I don't think it looks like a 57 Chevy. And an ice cream sundae was kind of served with that. And then in the 50s primetime cafe, they had a television set that was a chocolate mold that was integrated into one of the desserts over there. So when he told me the name of the outfit, I was curious, hey, because he said the place is still in business. They have a different name now. He told me who they were. He'll tell you who they are. And I found their website. They're in Orlando. And sure enough, if you wanted to, you can get the derby hat still. And the hot rod, classic car is still there too. And they can make them for you, or you can buy them from them. And then the television, there are several television sets that they have. And obviously I don't know which one would have been the one that may have been used for that, but he said they were, custom molds that they made for Disney and supplied them as long as he was there. And he was there till 1996. I know the derby hat dessert was retired at a certain point, and then they brought it back for some anniversary or celebration, but it was not the full molded derby. There was just like a little derby shaped piece of chocolate that was thrown on something. So that, sci-fi dine-in kind of reminded me of that as I was talking about these original places, because one of the other desserts he created for these locations was the PB&J milkshake, which I've never had because it's not something that, I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but it's not something that appeals to me because I don't like peanut butter ice cream. So I wouldn't be interested in a dessert based around peanut butter ice cream. But at the end of the show, you'll listen to the interview. I ask him how that dessert came to be, because it was his creation. And he tells the story. And the short version is that it was a very late night, and they had a bunch of stuff on the table, and he was trying to come up with concoctions to sell in the ice cream and soda shop there, and that was one that he came up with. And in several of the articles at the time where he's interviewed about it, he specifically mentions Smucker's, and Smucker's was the sponsor of the Soundstage restaurant. So I guess they doing a little corporate teamwork there. He threw it in there for good measure. So those are the we've been through Soundstage and the Commissary and Sci-Fi and Brown Derby and the cafeteria and 50s prime time. So now we're at the back of the park, and we're just come off of Muppet Vision, and we're back at Mama Melrose's, which if you were to go today, to your left outside Muppet Vision, there is Pizza Rizzo, which is the pizza restaurant, the Muppet-themed pizza restaurant, which was not there. There was no restaurant there for, when did they open Pizza Rizzo? 5-6 years ago?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That building had been used for a variety of things over the years, from an arcade to AFI film display and a whole bunch of things. So the restaurant conversion was, I think, just before Galaxy's Edge went online.
Yeah.
It was like the year before that they did it.
Yep. So a few years before Sci-Fi Dine-In, a few months after Sci-Fi Dine-In opened, they opened Mama Melrose's. So that would be the additional sit-down restaurant located there. Now, that restaurant was originally supposed to be a Muppet-themed restaurant. And Jim Korkis has an extensive article on it. The late Jim Korkis has an article that he wrote about the restaurant, and again, all of this stuff that was in development when Jim Henson passed away. And their ideas for the restaurant were, it was, you were going to be in kind of like the Muppet Vision load area, where much like if you go into Mama Melrose's now, there's exposed beams and pipes and things like that. And part of the gags, there was just supposed to be an endless amount of Muppet gags going on around you as you ate in this restaurant. Like the Swedish Chef and projected things going on in the kitchen that, weren't actually going on in the kitchen. And at some point, Gonzo and Camilla were supposed to be getting stuck in the tubes over your head, and you would be able to hear them talking, and just an endless amount of, Muppet gags going on, and as you were trying to eat your pasta or whatever.
Yeah. Some artwork of that has showed up within the last month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was amazing.
Yeah, there's some really, really cool artwork in that.
So when that deal fell apart, because they had not signed the deal yet when Jim Henson passed away, they had to kind of call an audible. Muppet Vision was more or less finished or close to it when he passed away, but the restaurant was still in the development stages. They hadn't reached a final agreement with Disney on any of that, so Disney decided to pivot and say we need a new, concept for this. So they go out and they come up with an Italian mother, and there is, again, from Korkis's art, that Michael Eisner was obsessed with the things in the park having a story behind them, so you could explain why they were there. The short version of Mama Melrose, whose picture appears in many of the Birnbaum guides of the 90s, even though she never actually appeared in the restaurant. They staged a publicity photo in front of it. The story of Mama Melrose is that she was, just an immigrant or an East Coast Italian girl who goes out to the West Coast to make it in Hollywood. She doesn't make it in Hollywood, but she starts operating a restaurant on the studio lot, and that's why the interior of the restaurant looks like it was thrown together, by the studio people, and she serves great Italian food there. And so they staged this publicity shot out front the live action Mama Melrose. They literally pulled a street Miss Fear lady from somewhere else and had her dress up and, stand there in front of the restaurant. And they used that publicity shot for like 10 years. We have a couple good shots of it on our site, I think. But Raymond carried on about this. I mean, he loved what they were originally slinging at this Italian restaurant. One of the things was pizzas being prepared live on stage in a wood-burning oven. And at that point, the big thing of the 80s was Spago in Wolfgang Puck's Spago out in Los Angeles, where he was preparing these, fresh, odd, flavored wood-fired pizzas with, exotic toppings like salmon and things like that. And so they recreated that here. They, put a pizza oven in there, fresh fish and steaks grilled over hardwood charbroiler. Other menu items included lasagna and chicken, veal chops, pasta, a variety of toppings. Reservations recommended. And at this point, now we're up to 1994, Walt Disney World Resort guests could make reservations up to 3 days in advance. So that's 33% more time than you had when the park opened, when they only gave you 2 days.
I seem to recall there was always availability at Mama Melrose's, to the point where they would have placards and things out front, like trying to get people to come in because it was in a really odd spot. I mean, frankly,
you could never really knew it was there.
With it being so far back in the park, it was not a highly trafficked area, and so you wouldn't ever just randomly walk past it and see it on your way to someplace else. It was very tucked into a corner.
All of that is true, and it is still a place where there is almost always availability. I mean, you might have trouble there on Christmas Day or something like that, but it is just perennially available if you are in need of a place. Again, that's another spot. I've had hit or miss meals there, and I feel like it's unfair to the restaurants in the studios because I've kind of settled on, I like to eat at the Brown Derby on every visit I make to Florida. So on my lunch or dinner, which is usually only one that I have in the studios on a given visit, I tend to go to the Brown Derby, and I don't tend to make multiple day visits to the studios. So the other sit-down restaurants kind of get the short shrift from me now because I'm, a Brown Derby devotee.
Right.
But
so you forgot one restaurant.
I wouldn't say forgot, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, if you didn't...
Go ahead.
Well, the place that I probably ate more because I was on a budget than other places.
So it has a notorious reputation now for just like crappy food.
Yeah.
Like people love to just dump on this place. They really do. They're just like, the food is so bad there, and even the burgers are bad. But yes, the Backlot Express,
yes,
which is to the right of Indiana Jones, and as you are walking back to approach Star Tours, it's over on your left. Last time I ate there, I can remember it was a long time ago, but I had a burger and fries or chicken fingers. It was fine. I didn't. Yeah. But amongst the like the lifestylers, they're like, oh, I got anywhere but Backlot Express.
Yeah, I think it's probably. I think the menu has probably continued to change, and I think the quality of the food has probably dropped. But the thing that was sort of innovative at the time was the fact that it was much like an in-park version of Fuddruckers, where you got to pick whether you wanted, a charbroiled chicken or a burger or a hot dog or a salad, but then you had the whole toppings bar.
Right.
That you could go to after you got your basic meal.
Like the Pico's Bills setup used to be.
I mean, it had... Yeah. A whole bunch of garbanzo beans and bean sprouts and like cheddar cheese. It had a whole lot of different things that you could put on your burger in order to like dress it up really nicely. It wasn't super expensive, but it was good.
And we should mention that it's called the Backlot Express because it is set up like the backlot. So the areas of this massive spot, 600 spots, there's like the paint shop area
Right.
and the stunt hall and the sculpture shop and a model shop, and all of that's kind of behind like cages around you, so that you can't like make off with it. But it all looks like it's stuff being stored there to be used in productions that
Right.
that are happening at the real live movie studio that you're in.
Right. And it had, and still has, I think to this day, the Benny the Cab, the actual like mechanical thing that Bob Hoskins or the stunt person rode that got drawn over to be Benny, and you could just sit on it. It was just sitting out there, and up on a shelf is the mold for the Pegasus hovercraft from Horizons,
Yes.
just hanging out there for years and years and years. If they ever wanted to make another one, they could just pull that thing down and fill it up with fiberglass, and they're good to go.
Are you sure the reason that you liked it so much wasn't that one of the dessert offerings was apple pie?
That'd be the second
Seems
pie he had on the
Could have been.
first day.
Could have been.
So there is your kind of walking tour of the first and enduring restaurants. The Soundstage is the only one that closed. It closed in November of 1998 and eventually got converted into a staged and theater setup for the Bear and the Big Blue House stage show, which has gone through some changes over the years and is now the Disney Junior Live on Stage. I think it was Doug at one point was in there too.
No, Doug was replaced Superstar Television.
That's right.
But it would cycle through whatever the mix and Playhouse Disney was.
And so now with that Playhouse Disney / Disney Junior, it's interchanged. Now they can swap it out. So Vampirina's been in there, and Sophia the First, and they can just take whatever kind of is hot at the moment. Like, oh, we'll give them 10 minutes on stage. And
Right, yeah. It used to be puppet driven. I don't know if it's still puppets now.
I can honestly tell you, I have never set foot in the place or seen the show, so I am the wrong person. I am without children of that age, so I can't tell you what happens in there.
It was kind of no one can. Whatever happens inside of the Disney Junior stays inside of the Disney.
Stays inside there. Before we wrap up, I want to give a preview of kind of what Chef Pitts is going to talk about in his interview, because what I've done is I've cut out most of my dialogue with him, and so his is mostly a running dialogue of things that he touches on, some of which we've talked about, some of which he'll round out. But one of the things, you'll hear him talk about getting the job and developing the restaurants, his research trips to California, the Brown Derby, which was tough, the 50s prime time, which was fun, who he talked to about food in America in the 50s and drive-in movie theaters when he was deciding, because he grew up in Germany, so he didn't have a point of reference.
Oh, how fascinating.
Eisner's involvement and the executive tastings, the molded chocolate, as I mentioned, the Cobb salad and grapefruit cake he talks about, the milkshake, the Muppet restaurant. He does, when he talks about Mama Melrose, describes in great detail this amazing dessert pizza that they introduced there and designed especially for Mama Melrose's in that wood-fired kitchen. And as he describes how they took mozzarella cheese and would sweeten it overnight by soaking it in honey and sugar and I think vanilla, and would make this sauce out of like fruit that they would mash. I wanted to climb through the phone and eat it. Like, so I think it'll probably have the same impact when you hear it. I did ask, besides the Muppets, was there another restaurant or any other restaurants concepts that kind of got thrown out because, Disney being Disney, they, a lot of stuff gets thrown on the board. And I feel like a thief now, because I have, from time to time, opined to people before they made the Regal Eagle barbecue place at the American Adventure that what I would have ideally liked to have seen them do was take that space at American Adventure in Epcot where the quick service was before, where you could just get burgers and chicken fingers, and then take the empty pad next to it and make it a larger kind of food hall and pull from regions of America, like having New England clam chowder and having, beignets from New Orleans and maybe shrimp jambalaya there, and Chicago deep dish pizza and Baltimore pit beef sandwiches. I said there's a lot there that you could take foods that cities or regions are famous for and make a whole food court out of that that would fit perfectly next to the American Adventure. And, of course, they built the Regal Eagle barbecue place, so that's never going to happen. But Raymond told me that his favorite abandoned concept was called Taste of the Americas, and they were going to build a restaurant in the studios that had stuff from New Orleans and would have had a New England clam bake, and this is exactly as I'm describing, like these like a food court almost that would have had different stations from different regions of America. So apparently it was not an original idea of mine, but I swear I didn't know about that. So you'll hear a lot of that touched on at the end of the interview, a little bit of his touching on what he thinks has changed in the park and his philosophy on food quality in the park and how that changes as you move from making stuff in-house like they did when he was there to outsourcing most things like they do now. He pays tribute to some colleagues who've recently departed, including Bob Colburn, who had just passed away last month and was one of those guys that started at the bottom rung in 1971 and over the years had worked his way up to become a major manager by the time he retired and played a role in some of the success they had over there. We discuss my love of Starring Rolls Bakery, and then he delivers his closing remarks and farewell. So it's about 20 minutes, and he's any of you who saw him at Retro Magic, he's a fascinating guy, and the restaurants he created with his team in Disney MGM Studios and now Hollywood Studios, they all endure. They're all still there. And I can't think of a better testament to the fact that essentially the concepts he came up with 33 years ago are all still there. They haven't tinkered with them.
All right, Brian, well, thanks for putting this together. Let's take a listen to Chef Raymond Pitts.
At what point did you find out you were going to be the executive chef there for that particular park?
I found out a year and 6 months prior to opening. So I was handed a big book, a big binder, 3-ring binder. And it had all kind of concepts and ideas and even menus that were previously written. But once I was handed that binder, I was told by Larry Slocum, who was the vice president of parks at that time, that this is just a guide. I want you to do all of the research and development and go through all of the different restaurant concepts that have been pre-selected by California, obviously. I think WDI was involved and the creative side of our organization. And basically, I started going through all of it. I took several trips to California. I went to the Hollywood Brown Derby, which was on Vine Street there. And at that time, luckily for me, it was owned by Walter Schaffee, who had bought it from Bob Cobb. And what was even better about it, he was German and so was I. So we got along very, very well. I went there several times, tasted all the food that they had. I got the actual true story of the Cobb salad, as opposed to what was written back in those days. And I just started going through it restaurant by restaurant. The most difficult challenge, without a doubt, was the Brown Derby. The most fun menu to develop was 50s Prime Time. I had a lot of fun there, developing the dishes, talking to a lot of, believe it or not, senior citizens, to talk to them a little bit, as to what they had when they were young and they were growing up, And the same thing applied for the sci-fi drive-in theater. I talked to a lot of folks, again, senior folks that actually lived during the era where there was, drive-in movies all over the place. As I was growing up in Germany, we didn't have that. When I came to this country, there were a couple here in town, and then, before we even opened the studio, they were all gone.
Okay.
So those were the really fun restaurants to develop. There was a lot of, when it came to the Brown Derby, there were a lot of challenges because, quote, that was Michael Eisner's baby, so to speak. Although he was involved in every aspect of not only the creative side of then MGM Studios, but also in the selection of menu items. As I told you all the story with the hot dog, it was an unbelievable challenge, but something I will treasure for the rest of my life. There was no input from our side, if you will, as to what restaurants they were going to have. The only thing we really had control of is to research, develop the menus, and then ultimately we made presentations to Michael Eisner and then Frank Wells, along with Bob Matheson, Dick Nunes, Larry Slocum. They were in the tastings. And based on that, we developed the menus based on their feedback. I learned a lot, not only about the executives of the company, worked with them very closely, but also about the vision that WDI had, if you will, in developing these restaurants. And as we got closer to opening, it all really came together. They did a lot of research and development on them, as I said. But the key to the success of these restaurants really was the creativity of everyone involved, including chefs, managers, everyone. Several of the restaurants, starting with the Brown Derby, we had a Brown Derby hat, the famous hat of the Brown Derby. That's on the logo of the Brown Derby. That was made out of chocolate, and still a good friend of mine today. Chocolate, back then it was called chocolate a la carte. Today it's called chocolate accent. And they developed all of the, not only did they develop the molds, but also manufactured the chocolate for us, for the Brown Derby, for the Derby hat. We had, what was it? We had a car for the Cypher. You're talking about chocolate.
Yeah.
And then for, we had a television for 50s prime time.
Really?
Yes, and those, I believe, oh my God, they all stayed through my entire tenure there because they were very popular. People really enjoyed the creativity of it. But last time I went there, I didn't see any of that. But to me, the Brown Derby had, not only did it make a statement, but it was the symbol, the iconic symbol of the Brown Derby in regards to how it was recognized all over the world. The people that came from all over the world, I spoke to a lot of them, they remember that Brown Derby hat from the sign outside of the original restaurant off of Hollywood. The real story is that some friends of Bob Cobb came over to his house, and they had a couple of drinks, and then they all were getting hungry. And he lived, from what I understand, right around the corner. He said, "Well, let's just go over to the restaurant and see what we had." They were already closed. It was late at night, so he went into the refrigerator. He found some wilted lettuce and some different. You had some tomatoes, you had bacon, you had eggs, you had chives, you had avocado. Everything goes into the Cobb salad. And what he did, he chopped up that wilted lettuce real fine, and he put it in between a towel, if you will. And he squeezed it real tight and ran it under running water to get rid of all the juices so it's nice and dry. And he layered that in there, and then he lined it up with bacon, egg, chopped egg, tomatoes, chives, blue cheese, and then he made a very simple French dressing with vinegar, oil, salt, and pepper. Have a nice day. And he served it to them. They loved it so much they decided to put it on the Brown Derby menu, and it became an iconic dish. The same goes for the grapefruit cake. You either hate it or you love it. You know, made with fresh cream cheese, sugar, vanilla, a basic white cake, and they made an icing with the cream cheese, a little bit of lemon in there, and then it was layered with. They put the icing on top, on the cake in between the layers, and then layered fresh wedges of grapefruit. And that's another thing. You either loved it or you hated it, but boy, it was very popular. And I went to California and I saw Walter Sharpe. He took me to a lady that was in there, I guess worked for him for years. That's all she did is make the grapefruit cake. That's how many they served. I'm sure she's not alive anymore because she was quite old when I met her. Oh, they were triangles, really. They were wedges. So they were layered in the middle of the cake all the way around the top. And then they put another small layer of cream cheese on it, so when you put the next layer of cake on, it would stick to it. They layered the top based on how many slices. It was 12 at that time. They had 12 beautiful wedges of oh my goodness, grapefruit on there, so you could cut it evenly.
While we're talking about desserts, the peanut butter and jelly milkshake, that's one of your creations as well, isn't it?
Well, yes, it is. I should have copyrighted that thing, I tell you.
How did that come to be?
We were, oh my God, this was 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we had to finish up the soda fountain menu. And I saw jelly there, I saw peanut, we just bought a whole bunch of stuff and put it in the middle of the table. And then I got the mixing cups, and I started messing around. I said, you know something? Everybody loves peanut butter and jelly. What about, so I said, what the heck? I'm going to make it. So I made it, and I gave it to a few of the cooks, and some of the chefs that tried, and they loved it. I said, heck, we're going to do it. So we ended up doing it. And there were a couple other real nice ones. We had a molasses one. There were a lot of different ones. But the one that's still there, to my knowledge today, is the peanut butter jelly. It's probably one of the most popular drinks, and that's why I said maybe I should have copyrighted it,
Yeah. Get royalties on every shake,
Yeah, exactly.
So that you opened Sci-Fi in the spring of '91, a couple years after the park opened, and that same summer you opened Mama Melrose's in the back.
Correct.
And that was originally one of the concepts for that was going to be a Muppet restaurant. And
correct.
Yeah.
Because of contractual reasons.
So were you involved in it when it was originally going to be a Muppet restaurant?
Oh, yeah. But as I said, because there was a contract issue, they scrapped it.
Okay. And it became Mama Melrose's. And
Yep. A very creative restaurant, pizza oven at that time, wow, what's a pizza oven? People didn't even know, And we did fresh pizzas in there. We did a dessert pizza that was incredible. I don't know if it's still there today. So we would we take pizza dough and make it a little bit sweeter than normal. We would take fresh strawberries, put a tad of lemon in it, and then we would cook that and then thicken it up, a touch of vanilla in it, and we spread that onto the dough that would become the tomato sauce. And then we would take mozzarella cheese and we added vanilla, honey, and some sugar. And we mixed all that together and we let it sit overnight so the vanilla goes through the cheese and all of that, and the sugar, the honey sweetened it up. And we would put that onto the pizza, and then we would add diced apples, diced pears, all different kind of. And then we would make a streusel, which is basically flour, sugar, vanilla, and we put that on the top. It would crumble it's almost like a Dutch apple pie, the topping. and we would sprinkle that on the top, and then a little bit more of the special cheese we made, and baked it. It was incredible. With all the different types of fruits, and they loved it. We made, oh my God, fresh pasta, all kind of. The Mama Morello's was a very popular restaurant. Like I said, that one was thrown in our lap because they did away with the Muppets. But it was a great concept.
Any other restaurants other than the Muppets that you kind of remember were maybe in the planning phase and got scrapped?
Well, it was going to be an American-style restaurant that was going to go over there somewhere. We did the research and development on it. You know, it was called The Taste of the Americas, but it never went anywhere.
Okay.
The menu on that, we had stuff from New Orleans, a traditional clam bake, from up north. We did all different kinds of things, but it never happened. The other restaurant I really liked as well was not Soundstage, but oh my God, my brain, right next to the 50s with the rotisserie chicken and all that. That was also very successful, especially with the rotisserie right there. People could see it, roasting, and it was almost an interactive type of a thing, sort of like 50s prime time, where you came in, you could see all the chefs working, putting all the orders together as people was going through the lines, almost like a buffeteer type thing, but more upscale, I felt. That was very popular, but the one that I really took that I really enjoyed, like I said, was 50s Prime Time and the Brown Derby. Money no objects as far as the Brown Derby. The creativity, chef, listen, you do what you need to do, make it happen. And it was a huge success, especially during the grand opening, because that's where we housed all of the movie stars. That whole Brown Derby was closed off to all of the press. It was, Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, oh my God, they had, who else was there? Zsa Gabor, you name it. There were several past U.S. presidents in there. It was the party of the party. Bette Midler was there, De Niro, who's who. At the end of the day, I don't care what anybody says. If you have full control of ordering, receiving, inspecting, fabricating, and producing a product to the customers that you have full control of, the quality is untouchable. Once you start outsourcing, you lose full control, period. Yes, like when we had, and what I mean by that is we had FPC, the food production facility. So you could order bread from the bakery, cookies, cakes, whatever you wanted, they would make it to your specifications. If you wanted a tenderloin already trimmed, so you don't have to pay for the labor to clean it, you could order that from food processing. If you wanted a basic demi-glace or tomato sauce or different dressings or mac and cheese, you could get all of that made to your specifications. When you give a spec to an outside company, if you will, and you buy it from the outside, what does that do? It does one thing, okay? And that is, it's cheaper. It saves you labor, okay? What it doesn't do, it doesn't give you the ability to exactly know what's in that product 100%, although it'll tell you, but don't believe it. You don't have control of the quality of the product. You don't have control of the consistency of the product. You don't have control of the proper texture of the product or any of that. And that's what's missing, in my opinion, today at Disney, because they outsource a lot of products. And to me, that's where you lose control. At least that's how I was raised, if you will. Don't ask me to put on a dinner if I have to buy stuff from the outside and eat and serve it. That's not cooking. Where I come from, that's what they call shoemaking. I know times change, economics change, but you can still make a lot of quality products at a very competitive rate and end up having control of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! The bread is a little underbaked today. Oh, that's okay. Just put it in the oven, cook it a little bit longer before we serve it. That's not the way to do it. Or dressing is too thick. Oh, let's go ahead and add a little water. You lose control of quality. And any chef that was there during these days will tell you the same thing. Matter of fact, I went to a funeral last week. On the 18th, actually, Bob Coburn passed away. He was, I don't care what anybody says, he was one of the iconic managers back in those days, running the Magic Kingdom. Then they put him in charge of the food processing center. Slowly but surely, all these great managers and chefs are starting to pass away. Rolf Gusweiler passed away. Tony Geraci passed away. Walter Meyer passed away. They're all starting to fade out. Nothing but great memories from my time at Disney.
My absolute favorite thing to do was to come into that park first thing in the morning, go right to Starring Rolls Bakery there next to the Brown Derby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And sit and have my coffee and pastry for breakfast. The pastries there were delicious.
Made fresh every day. Nothing in advance, none of that night before, any of that. I wouldn't go for that. It was made every single morning. But the success of the studio was because of the dedication of the entire food and beverage team. The support we received from upper management, general food and beverage manager, the food and beverage director, vice president Lois Slocum. Some people found it very difficult to work with Larry, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you something. That man asks you to do something, you take care of it. I never, ever had one issue with that man. Ever. I had the utmost respect for him. He was tough, but hey, that's what he got paid for, to do a job, like everyone else. But he was a great example, a great team leader, and nothing but joy from my side to everybody.
All right. Well, that was really interesting, Brian. So you edited that down, as you said, but a lot of great information in there, and I'm really glad you gave him a call. So does Raymond want to come back and talk to us again about anything?
He has repeatedly offered to come back to a Retro Magic. He really wants to cook for our room full of people, not necessarily feed them, but go up and do a Julia Child style demonstration with his team of,
I'm only doing that if we have a big mirror over the stage on an angle so everybody can see the pots and pans. And
well, he's got a lot of pride in the accomplishments, and rightfully so, of the Culinary Olympics teams that competed from Disney, and those teams that he and Johnny Rivers and Keith Keogh and others led in the 80s and 90s, and they set a record for winning medals that will never be equaled.
Right.
And to think that was Disney's culinary legacy, and you do hear a little bit of wistfulness in his voice that they're not focused on those things today. That as you get into the revolving door of management, and there aren't career path people there as much now as there are people who kind of come from central casting and MBA school, and here you're in charge of all the food at this park, and so you do hear a bit of that wistfulness in his comments. But he wants to come back and talk more food with us, and so he's I could listen to him all day. Our conversation was much longer than this, but I cut it down as much as I could and kept the good parts.
Cut it down to 305, as Billy would
Absolutely.
say. So, well, thank you very much for this culinary. What's the word I'm looking for? Crusade. Culinary cabaret.
Cabaret.
Through the studios. How you wanted to kind of tease? Well, we did kind of tease at the beginning of about the next episode being, or at least an upcoming episode on Pleasure Island.
Yep, we'll do that in January.
There's something else you wanted to talk about too. What was it?
We've got some new merch in the shop.
Oh, there we go.
So go check that out. And of course, we still have a few robots left.
Yeah, the
For
Horizons
Christmas ornaments, right?
Butler robot, yeah. And head over to lbvhistory.org/donate for $25. One of the Horizons Butler head robots can be used.
Maybe do we have a few earful towers left from the holiday persuasion?
Sadly,
Did we get rid of those?
No,
we
they are
got
all
okay.
gone. Those are gone. The Melikalikimakas are gone.
Your stocking stuffer options are the watch, or the puffy stickers, and the robot head ornament. I think that's it in terms of our merch, other than what's available from the T-shirt and merch shop, of course.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everybody who has bought and supported us on the other stuff, and you go get your robots now.
That's right. Yep. Got them. So
this is the time.
As always, we appreciate everybody's donations and everything, keeping us going and keeping us on the air here, so to speak. But gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see everybody next month, and actually not even next month, just in a few weeks here, as we do a holiday episode, and we've got the holiday streaming, and we might just have to play Cranium Command Revisited for everybody on that holiday stream. So keep your eyes peeled to Twitter and Facebook and all the great socials out there. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and give us a shout out in iTunes or wherever your favorite podcasting app is. And with Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History, and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com, and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter at LS1JT, and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.